dust envelope. It was first discovered in 1969 by a group of astronomers led by Eric Becklin.
But first of all,
Two potent powers struggle in its depths. They now force the star to expand to dozens of times its size, then make it shrink again. Only
Plane wrinkled with bottomless crevices is perpetually shrouded in
other energy particles that come from our
times
star
its size,
to get
then
people
make
there
it
on
shrink
some
again,
kind of
only to
spaceship
flare
without
up
melting,
with new
burning,
energy.
or even self-destructing would take quite a lot of technology.
One of these transformations is
About the New Horizons mission. The mission has been one of the toughest space missions in human history. The probe reached Pluto and captured a view of the rock on the outskirts
times its size, then make it shrink again, only to flare up with new energy. One of these transformations is
The core of this star. There are two powers that are struggling, and because of this, the star size is shrinking from supergiant to a small.
but no one can predict the exact instance with any certainty. Hello and welcome to Z. Please don't forget to subscribe and hit the
The
bell
other
icon.
interesting thing that scientists
If covered
want to know
by
is why the
perpetual
sun's surface
shadow.
temperature is far less than the corona around the sun.
Let's find
Scientists
out more
understand
about it.
that it has something to do with the sun's magnetic field that connects
This
the sun's
epic
surface
site
to its outer
could be-
Before the New Horizons
It's a
Pro
key
was launched on
mystery to
January
understanding the
19,
sun and solar
2006,
system. And
the
with the
primary
probe's
goal
help,
of the mission
we're
was to
about to
study
figure it
Pluto,
out.
once
What we
dubbed the
do
most
know is
distant
that the sun
planet
is
of the solar
basically a big
system.
hydrogen gas fusion bomb 93
This
million
epic
miles away from
site
Earth.
could be
With a
enjoyed by a
surface
space
temperature
traveler
5,600
approaching
degrees
C.W.
Celsius, which
Leonis.
is 4,000 degrees higher than the melting point
560
That's
times more than our Sun,
7,232
and its
degrees
volume becomes
Merge all planets, including Mars, and even brush the inner boundary of the asteroid belt.
You could fit
The radius at its pulsation peak may reach 560.
Pluto is
Getting
about
anywhere
40
close to it has been a
astronomical
serious
units away
challenge
from the Sun
until now.
and is a
The Parker
dark
probe,
and indistinguishable
named for Professor
object.
Emeritus Eugene Parker,
This
who
distant
predicted the
celestial
existence of
body
solar
follow-
wind decades ago, was recently
600
launched on
and
August
dwarf
12,
planet looked like.
2018, and will
because
become the
Pluto is so
fastest
far
man-made
away from
spacecraft
Earth.
ever. It
The
will
mission
swoop
team had
into
to
the
come up
sun
with
for
clever
orbit
tricks to
quickly and
speed
then
up the
back out
probe's
while
journey,
collecting
because
data
otherwise
over
it would
a
take the
7-year
probe.
period. The probe will fly
600
closer
and
to
We
the
would
sun than any
replace
other
our Sun
spacecraft.
with
It will
C.W.
gain the speed
Leonis.
it needs
It
using
would
the gravity
engulf
of
Mars
Venus during
and
7
reach
flybys
till
over the course of 7
asteroid
years
belt.
that will eventually bring the probe within
The
4 million miles of the sun's surface.
Interestingly,
On the
the
same
star has a
distance the sun
mass
is
of
the planet
only
Mercury.
1.5
Think
to
of this
4 solar
maneuver like a
masses.
gravity assist, or a
Like other
slingshot
red
around the
giants,
planet.
C.W.
And each time
Leonis
getting
48
closer to the
Earth
sun.
years.
And it's going to be traveling
We
very
know that
fast.
Pluto's
For the
radius
record,
is
the current fastest spacecraft
1,188
defined by
kilometers,
heliocentric
which means
velocity
that
is
it
held
is
by
noticeably
Helios 2,
a majestic
as it was last
star,
seen moving
also
away from
known
Earth
as
at a speed of
C.W. Leonis.
220,123.2
Its radius at its
miles per
pulsation
hour.
peak
But
may
the Parker
reach
probe, on its
560
final
times.
Probe
will be
passed the moon's
hurtling
orbit
around
while
our star
approaching
at
the
an
solar
astounding
system's largest planet,
430,000
Jupiter.
miles per hour. However,
The spacecraft
it's
took
currently
pictures of the
traveling
gas giant and its
38,000
moons on
miles per
Io.
hour, which is less than 10%
A
of
majestic
peak speed.
star,
But in
also
the
known
end,
as
it will be
C.W.
going so
Leonis.
fast that it will leave other
Its
spacecraft
radius
eating
at its
metaphorical
pulsation
dust.
peak may
The
reach
spacecraft is supposed to go into its
560
first
times.
To
orbit
our
of the star in
Sun,
November
which has
2018,
surface
and
temperature
get
of
closer to the sun on 24 different
5,504.85
swinging
degrees
closer into the
Celsius.
sun's atmosphere,
But
or the
because
sun's
its
corona.
massive
C.W.
The glowing
Leonis was a
halo
white
plasma
blue
extends
star
about
with a
5
mass
million
3
miles
to
into
5
outer
times
space
that of the
around
Sun.
It's
However,
a bit
by
hard
a
to see
billion
unless
years
you're
ago,
using coronagraph or
a
looking at the
significant
sun
portion
during
of the
a
At the
total
same
solar
time,
eclipse. The probe will
observations
have
of
to
the
withstand
celestial
incredible
body's
amounts
proper
of heat and
motion made
radiation,
it possible
but
to
it will zip
calculate its
towards the
mass
sun to
with a
measure
high
and
degree
gather
of
data.
accuracy.
The probe will
It
also have
turned
to
out
withstand
to
being
hypothetically
bombarded by
placed
tiny,
in the middle of our
fast-moving
system,
particles,
all the planets
some of
as
which
far
will
as
hit the
Mars would
spacecraft.
find themselves
To fix
under
this
its
problem,
surface,
the Parker
which would
probe
even
is fitted
brush
with
the inner
Kevlar
boundary
blankets
of the
to
The probe
protect
swung
itself
within
from impacts
1.4
during
million
the
miles
probe's
of
close
Jupiter
approach.
and got a big
The
gravity
sun will
assist
appear
from the gas
25
giant.
times wider to the probe than when it left Earth.
This little
And it will
maneuver
also be
massively reduced its time of
625 times
hypothetically
brighter.
placed
We
in the middle
told
of
you
our
that the Parker
system,
probe is
all the
moving really
planets
fast.
as far as
But to
Mars
give you a
would
better
find
idea,
themselves under
we'll
its
explain that you
surface,
probably know
which
that
would
the
even
closer
brush
things
the
are
inner
in orbit
boundary
around
of the
any
asteroid.
Sun.
object mass,
C.W. Leonis is a red giant. A red giant forms after a star has run out of hydrogen fuel for nuclear fusion.
slowly settled in the star's
that would
center.
be the end of our
The
Parker
helium
probe.
then ousted
Parker
all the
solar
remaining
probe will end up
hydrogen and
reaching
formed a
speeds of
scorching hot core
125
that did
miles
not
per second.
participate in
The
any
circumference of the
thermonuclear
Earth is
kilograms,
almost
or
25,000
18%
miles in
of the
diameter.
lunar mass.
This means that if the Parker probe were in orbit
It is easy
around
to
Earth,
see that
it would
Pluto
make
is
one
much
full
more
trip in
similar to
just
small
3.3
celestial
minutes.
bodies such as
To give
roughly
you an idea just how
1.5 to
close
4
the probe
solar
is going to get
masses.
to the sun,
Its surface temperature is just 2,300 Kelvin, or about 2,000 degrees Celsius.
Make sure the probe's electronics stayed in good shape. At one point, when New Horizons was approximately 3 billion miles from Earth, scientists placed the spacecraft into hibernation.
Roughly 1.5 to 4 solar masses. Its surface temperature is just 2,300 Kelvin, or about 2,000 degrees Celsius.
A star maintains its stability through a fine balance between its own gravity, which holds it together, and the outwards pressure.
The star's evolution into a red giant, which is common for all stars with masses near the Sun. The star's internal pressure leads it to expand
its characteristics. This is the reason why it topped the list of dwarf planets in 2006.
The Sun's corona has an
Due to its long and elongated trajectory, it emits on average 8,500 times more energy than our Sun. Like any other red giant, CW Leonis is in its
encountered technical challenges because the 1,000-pound probe wasn't receiving enough sunlight to generate enough power, which caused communication issues. The situation worsened the first.
Emits on average 8,500 times more energy than our Sun. Like any other red giant, CW Leonis is in its
Our Sun will become red giant in 5 billion years and engulf Earth. When CW Leonis was not a red giant.
The space object gradually takes on a blood-red tint as its diameter increases by dozens of times. At some point, the pressure and temperature of the stellar planet
first passed its orbit perihelion since its discovery, approaching the Sun as close as 29.7 astronomical units. Several billion years. It is assumed that in its salad days, CW Leonis was a white-blue star with a mass 3 to 5 times that of the Sun.
4.5 hours to reach our planet. Approximately 4 months before approaching Pluto, the spacecraft's cameras started revealing distinct features of the dwarf planet.
Several billion years. It is assumed that in its salad days, CW Leonis was a white-blue star with a mass 3 to 5 times that of the Sun.
5 times mass that of Sun. If we see from Earth, the star is changing its brightness because the star is shrinking its size to super.
Still occurring in the star's depths. This starts a nuclear fusion chain reaction that turns helium nuclei into carbon. This phenomenon, known as the
and will reach its greatest value in the year 2113. By that time, the dwarf planet will be near its aphelion, which is 49 billion years ago. A great part of the celestial body's hydrogen had burned out and transformed into helium, slowly settling in the stars.
The level of detail in New Horizons images increased every music week. Another challenge during the mission was the discovery of Kerberos and the 2 new moons orbiting the dwarf planet.
Billion years ago, a great part of the celestial body's hydrogen had burned out and transformed into helium, slowly settling in the stars.
When CW Leonis becomes red giant, it shines 11,300 times more than our Sun, and when it shrinks,
rather than intensely heating up, the outer layers of the star cool and darken. Although CW Leonis has a lot of carbon right now, it lacks enough mass to reach.
That is the reason why it cannot be seen from Earth with the naked eye. And even in images from the Hubble Space Telescope, the dwarf planet looks like a murky nuclear reactions. This process, typical for all stars whose mass is close to that of the Sun, is the starting point for a star's transformation.
Figure out a way to avoid any potential problems. If there was more debris near Pluto, the mission team had 2 backup options: either use the antenna acting as a shield against
nuclear reactions.
The field's instrument suite aboard
This process, typical for all stars whose mass is close to that of the Sun, is the starting point for a star's transformation.
1,000 astronomical units. Matter partially detaches from the star, forming a carbon-oxygen gas nebula that surrounds it. The complex structure of the...
Before moving on to the celestial body's terrain features, we need to understand its internal structure. According to the currently accepted model, oxygen in the object's interior becomes unstable. The stellar matter gradually cools off and shrinks under the influence of gravitation. This heats up the stars
at an altitude of 4,800 m, collecting scientific data on the satellites and atmosphere of the dwarf planet. But recovering that data wasn't simple.
Oxygen in the object's interior becomes unstable. The stellar matter gradually cools off and shrinks under the influence of gravitation. This heats up the stars.
It contains approximately 70 different chemical compounds, including iron,